And I'm taking a stroll.
He's taking a stroll.
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 I'm taking a stroll.
What happened to horror movies actually being scary? Now, I've had this debate with lots of different people about how subjective the term scary really is, but for me personally, I've seen too many horror movies and I've been watching them since I was a small kid, so I'm never really afraid when I'm watching a horror movie. I judge it on its ability to make me care about the dangers that the characters have to face. And this is why most horror movies fail. They don't make you care about the characters or the situations that they're in. Anyone with half an imagination can create a cool monster. That's really not the hard part, because that's not what makes a movie scary. Some of the scariest things never fully come out of the shadows, and it seems like the more you show the monster, the less impact it has. I've mentioned this movie before, but Session 9 is one of my favorite horror movies, and it doesn't even have a monster in it. The fans have been able to give Lovecraft's monsters a physical appearance, but he actually doesn't really describe them in much detail. He only really says that they're unimaginable and terrible to look at. They're an inconceivable tangle of tentacles and teeth, and he really emphasizes the indescribable nature of his monsters. What his characters see and experience is so strange that there's really not even a way to describe it. It's kind of the same with Stephen King. He doesn't really create legendary monsters. Some of his most popular books are pretty basic. Cujo, Misery, Pet Sematary, Salem's Lot, so a dog, an obsessed fan, zombies, and a vampire. So with movies that focus on the characters, we really don't care what the monster is. We care more about the impact that the monster has on the characters. What happened to horror movies attempting to be scary? Horror movies don't really seem to have their own identity anymore. Everything's either a remake or a reboot or something that we praise just because it's different, and not because it's actually a good horror movie. With the advancement of CGI and the increase in corporate interference, original ideas, practical effects, and genuine scares have all but disappeared. Spectacle, cliché, and jump scares have replaced tension, character development, and atmosphere. Classic movies like Halloween, The Thing, and Alien have all been replaced by inferior remakes and rip-offs drowning in empty jump scares and unoriginal ideas. We pretended like found footage movies had some added realism, or that a sudden loud sound is scary no matter the circumstances. It Follows is a return to that old school slow burn style of filmmaking, but the monster is too stupid to really be a threat. I think it's supposed to represent something deeper like an STD or an unwanted pregnancy, but in all that symbolism, the filmmaker forgot to create any characters or even tell an actual story. The movie is a great representation of the problem with modern horror movies. Filmmakers forgot how to scare us. But with a movie like Sinister, I would say the lack of explanation made it more terrifying. I could easily point out all the flaws with Bagul and how improbable the set of circumstances would have to be for him to even kill one family, but beyond my own desires to overanalyze everything, I can say that I was genuinely engaged with the movie the whole time. But this was because the movie sold me on the character's reaction to Bagul. It was Ethan Hawke's performance that made this movie scary. I only started to ask questions after the second movie came out, because it turned its focus to the supernatural side and forgot what made the first movie so terrifying in the first place. I didn't believe a kid would go into a basement with a ghost to watch snuff films. It all felt like they were just making it up as they went along. Ambiguous doesn't mean non-existent, and for a lot of modern cinema, these movies feel like the creators have no idea about the details of their own story. I mean, it just reminds me of something that Tarantino said.
That when you create a mythology, stuff, forget about it. Stuff that never will make it to the movie. You need to know everything. But in the case of me, like I said, if you're creating a mythology, you got to know all the rules of that. It doesn't matter what the audience knows. They got to know you know.
But with characters like Freddy or Jason, we all know that they're just the boogeyman under your bed or the mysterious shadow in the woods. Because it doesn't matter specifically what they are, but they have to represent a specific type of threat. Freddy is the fear of nightmares, and Jason is the fear of the woods at night. They only have to be developed enough to know what we're supposed to be afraid of. Because with these types of horror movies, you want the monster to win, and you really don't care who the characters are. We don't know anything about this thing. I mean, we don't even know how it kills its victims. This is the first victim we see, and I don't know exactly how she was killed. I don't think a broken leg should kill you, right? And only a white chick would get caught on a wide open beach by something that can't run. I mean, they do have a reputation. The other person we see die gets sexed to death, I guess? Again, the movie doesn't even give the slightest clue about what's going on. It's basically a walking STD. If someone's being followed by it and you have sex with them, the thing starts following you until you have sex with somebody else. But I don't really know what these characters are afraid of, because this has to be the worst weakness for any monster ever. Just have sex and I won't kill you. Oh no, how are we ever gonna survive this? I mean, I will give it credit for that because this is usually the easiest way to get killed in a horror movie. But this thing should be exhausted because you have a bunch of, I don't know, juniors and seniors in high school, and they're afraid of a monster that can only hurt them if they don't have sex. Let me say that again. You have a bunch of high school kids, and their parents are never home, and they're afraid of a monster that only can be defeated by sex. Somebody wrote this as a horror movie. The most obvious thing is that it doesn't seem like it really wants to catch anyone. And I'm not saying that because it walks slow. I'm just wondering why it changes into people that are super obvious. I mean, maybe it has to scare you before it can kill you, maybe? Because it seems like it turns into creepy shit just to fuck with everyone. And I like this shot, but it was probably only made for the trailer because it doesn't really make sense why it would change into a naked man and climb all the way up there. So this thing's walking up to the house and says, what's the best way for me to get into this house and kill that girl? I could always just be a cop and knock on the door. No. I got it. I know what I'll do. I grew up watching Jason and Michael Myers and Romero-style slow zombies, so I do think that slow-moving villains can be scary. But for something that moves so slow, it should be instant death if it touches you. So somehow they've been at the beach long enough for this thing to catch up to them, okay? And there's nothing stopping it. It has a clear path right to the girl. But it walks up to the main character and it plays with her hair. What happened to horror movies attempting to be scary? I mean, I don't know if this is a metaphor for something because she should be dead. But this thing's not only slow, ineffective, and stupid, but I think it's also really easy to trick or kill. I mean, the first thing is it's not a ghost, so even if you can't see it, you can still physically interact with it. And you can injure it like a normal person, even though it recovers instantly, but it can still be damaged. They managed to put a sheet on it and you can see a physical thing underneath it, so just get a crowd of people and throw paint on it. There's so many ways to kill or expose this thing, but they tried this Scooby-Doo toasters in a big ass swimming pool idea. To be fair, I thought this movie was about teenage pregnancy, and the final scene was an attempted abortion, and the blood in the water meant that it either worked or that she had her period and was never pregnant in the first place. I guess. But that really doesn't explain why having sex with someone would make that go away. So, how would I fix this movie? There was an old episode of X-Files where a guy had to be constantly heading west or else his head would explode. He had to constantly be moving to stop the pain. This movie was missing a sense of urgency. There was no objective and the monster wasn't a big enough threat to really impact the characters. So all they had to do was add another symptom, like you slowly start to become one of them if you just run away and don't try to have sex with anyone. Just anything would do. I mean, this movie isn't so different than The Ring. But at least The Ring had a creepy videotape and Samara gave you 7 days to, basically have sex. This movie had so much potential, but it failed to create likable characters or a compelling villain, but since it only cost $2 million to make, it easily made 10 times that at the box office. The cinematography was good. I liked the long, slow zoom shots, and the symmetry in most of the scenes reminded me of The Shining, even though the visuals were kind of boring and the color was bleached out a little bit, but I think they wanted to give it a 1980s kind of appearance. This is a movie that I put in the same category as The Babadook or Hereditary or The Conjuring. It's just one of those movies that has a decent rating and good reviews because it's different, but not because it's actually a good story or scary. So what do you think? Is It Follows a good horror movie? Or do you only like it because it's different?